Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you might be. Thank you for joining us for this VMware Community Roundtable opening act. I'm Tony Foster, and joining me today we have a great panel, and we're talking about transitioning to the workplace of the future. So, lots of interesting areas and places to discuss on this. I'd like to start by introducing the panel we have assembled to discuss this today. So, Tom, you want to go ahead and introduce yourself? Oh, yeah, Tom.
Hi, my name is Tom Howarth. I've been in the VMware community almost since its inception back in the early noughties. I'm currently working in a DevOps role as a platform manager, and I also write for a Dutch DevOps distributor called Amazak. So that's me. I've been working at home for probably on and off the last 10 years.
Wonderful. Tina, you want to go ahead and introduce yourself?
Yes, sure. My name is Tina Krovel. I'm working for VMware as a technical account manager, and I've been in home office since I started to work for VMware. So I'm not new to this area.
Lawrence?
Hi, my name is Lawrence van Duin. I work for Rawworks as a technology evangelist on the VMware track. I'm a blogger, active in the community, and I like to share knowledge.
Awesome. Joe?
Hey, good morning. My name is Joep. I'm an independent content creator, mostly in the cloud native space, but my background is in VMware. So I'm a VCDX. I used to do a lot of engineering work, ex-CTO, but as I turned independent about 18 months ago, I've worked from home since then.
Awesome. So this is a big topic for many people out there. Lots of differing opinions on the workplace of the future and everything. So let's just start out with some prognostication. Do you think we're going to be dealing with this permanently, or are we going to start shifting back to people going into the offices?
I personally think that we will be going back to the offices because I already know that a lot of companies have the workforce back in the office. So people maybe spend their time between home office and the office, but I think the office will again be a part of our daily working day.
Yeah, I agree with that. I'm current contract that I'm working on is 2 days in the office, 3 days remote. They're expecting to increase that up. That's if our current glorious leader, Mr. Boris Johnson, can get his act into gear as to what we're actually supposed to be doing. Then we'll have to do. I think we will go back to the office eventually, but I think flexible working will become more accepted, and bosses will be more happy for people to work at home.
I think there's going to be a divide between the group that actually goes into the office and kind of goes back. But I think there's also going to be a group that will stay remote completely. They enjoy it, they like it. So I think the divide between those two groups will become bigger as time progresses. And, even creating like a disconnect between those groups within a single company or a business unit. So yeah, I think we'll have our own little problems to deal with in that sense.
Yeah, I will agree with you because I work at the Dutch tax office currently, and they close the doors till end of the year. So yeah, I've been working home since February full time. So I would hope that the offices will open again sometime, but yeah, I don't think so, but I hope it. I would love to see more interaction with people and then via the camera.
I think. Sorry. I think also it also depends on the type of management that your company actually has.
Yeah.
If your manager is a micromanager, they're having kittens at the minute. They don't feel in control. They don't understand that metrics need to change as to what is measured as success.
I fully agree on that one, because some managers, they still don't trust their employees. Because they don't see them, they don't know if they're really working the time they should be working. So I think this is an important issue that will either has to change by the managers, or many more people have to go back to the offices, because they want to be seen that they are working.
But
Yeah, I think that differs per company, because I work for a different couple of companies in the Netherlands, and they're quite open, and I can plan my own time if I do it in the morning at 6 a.m. or in the evening, as long as I get results done. They're happy.
So, sort of a offshoot question of this, what do you think about monitoring software? Monitoring employees to make sure that they're quote unquote at their computer doing their job.
so if you didn't trust them in the first place, why did you hire them at all?
Exactly. Yeah.
That's kind of
if
the
they have
beginning of the argument, and then from there, you'll get into the discussion of, okay, does work actually mean hours spent? Does it mean hours spent at the computer? So, for instance, I'm a content creator. Um, yes, a large part of my work is at the laptop, is at the computer, but it all starts with an idea. I don't get ideas sitting at my desk. I get ideas by walking around. So, for instance, is that time I charge my clients? Is that time spent usefully working? Sometimes it is, sometimes it isn't. But the computer is not a good measure of work or productivity at all.
No, I agree completely. I know of several companies that are actively putting monitoring software and keystroke loggers on laptops, also actively monitoring video screens. It also, because you're now at home, it also integrates a lot of privacy issues, in that most people don't have a dedicated space that is deemed their office. They're sat in the kitchen, they're sat in their bedroom, they're sat in the living room. Personally, I'm more productive in the mornings and the late evenings. I don't naturally align with standard 9 till 5 business office times. That's just me. So this to me is absolutely perfect. I do my work at the time that my brain is most active and I'm most productive. But to a micromanager, of which I've had quite a few over the years of my career, because I'm a bit of a grey silver box person, that they get stressed out because you're not sat at your desk. They can't see you. If they can't see you, you're not working. And that whole psyche has got to change, not just as remote workers come across, but also from the perspective of people in the office. People in the office, in the kitchen, having a cup of coffee, can just as be working as much as if they're sat at their desk. They may be having a technical discussion about a problem.
Yeah, I fully agree here too. Being productive doesn't always count on the time you spend in front of your computer, because some people, they just need to clear their head to be ready to come up with the ideas for the next project, or within the next project. They go running, they go and mow the lawn outside. They are not spending 8 hours a day in front of their computers, but they might be even more productive than if they would be working 8 hours in the office. And you can't really track that. Yes, you can track if someone is typing away or if someone is sitting right in front of their computer, but that doesn't mean they're productive because they're sitting in front of it for 8 hours.
I know for sure I'm less productive when I'm in an office with people around me asking questions, and yeah, I like to answer those questions, but I'm more productive just doing my thing and going on it.
Yeah, but I ask you a question now. By that productive, are you on about stuff that you are recovering, but also by having these conversations, you're also enabling those other people to move forward with their work, enabling them to become more productive.
Yeah, it's
also part and parcel of your work.
It's both. Yeah.
So
But most of my work is kind of solo. So yeah.
So for me, a lot of my work is actually in collaboration with other folks. So I'm organizing a big industry event for a client at the moment. Responsible for content, and that means I have to reach out to dozens of people to figure out schedules, logistics, topics, abstracts, all kinds of stuff. And I have to be actively pursuing those people to get that info. And so what I'll do is I'll do that whenever it suits me best, because like Tom said, I'm an evening person as well. So after I put my kids to bed, that's what I do, work like that. And then in the morning, I do all the solo work. I work on all of the tasks that don't need anyone, um, because I work for mostly US based customers, which means that the evening is when they are awake. My mornings is when they're asleep. So I naturally have a block of time in the morning, in my mornings, where I can do all of the solo work. But that doesn't mean that is the more productive block of time. I can get more done if I talk to people, if I disturb them in their work, so that I get what I need, or vice versa.
Awesome. So, taking this a little bit different direction, pay changes. So, I know this is something that's fairly hot topic here in the States. I don't know about the rest of the world, but there's been a lot of discussion of, if you're not in the office, why should we be paying you this exorbitant salary? If you're now doing your work from the middle of nowhere, you should take a salary cut or a pay cut. Anybody have thoughts on that?
In the UK, we've been used to that sort of pay disparity for a long, long time. For many years, we've had this thing called the London Waiting Allowance. So if you work for the government within the M25, say, you get a higher amount of money than if you work for the government outside of the M25. So I can understand the issues. However, if you've gone from a position where you work in San Jose, Palo Alto, or anywhere else in the Silicon Valley, and as part of this issue, you're now working out of some shed halfway up a mountain in Colorado, that shouldn't change your pay. However, companies are perfectly allowed to pay you for what they want to pay you for that particular job. Now, whether you get pay rises thereafter from living in the middle of Colorado, halfway up your hill, doing your work, is another matter altogether. And the disparity might come in that it becomes an allowance for living in these individual areas. And I think that's more acceptable than turning around to somebody and saying, okay, you've got to take a 20% pay cut because you're no longer in San Antonio or you're no longer in Palo Alto. That's my view.
Yeah, I think, for example, here in Germany, companies wouldn't be able to do this, because this is something, when you sign the contract with the company, you get your salary. So they can't really go and say, because you're not coming to the office anymore, you have to take a pay cut of 20%, because here in Germany, this would be illegal. Mm-hmm. The employee can take the employer to court for that. So this is something you can't do here, but I think it depends on the countries. And some companies probably will do it in countries where this is an option to do so. Even though I don't think someone working from a remote site is working less or different instead of going to the office and doing the same work. A lot of people turn out to be much more productive if they don't go to the office, because they're being interrupted. They have small talk in between, so they don't focus like an hour's time on a project or something they have to work on because they're interacting with other colleagues. So I don't think that should be something companies should do, because you still do your work no matter where you work.
And
Yeah,
the other part is, if the position you took at the company was a remote position to begin with or not. Because if it is a remote position, then I don't think it's fair to decrease salaries at all. But if it is a position where you were expected to come in the office, for instance, in Silicon Valley, in the Bay Area, and then you move somewhere else, then I think it may be reasonable, depending on the circumstances, but it can never be a one-side street, a one-way street. It always has to be a discussion, because if the employee moves from expensive Silicon Valley to, I don't know, rural Colorado or wherever, then there's other perks the employee gets, like more outside space, more peace and quiet, whatever it is. So I think as long as it is in a conversation and both get something out of it, it is worthwhile to go through that effort and that conversation. But otherwise, a one-sided pay cut, I don't think is reasonable at all. And again, like in Germany, in the Netherlands, it is illegal as well.
It's illegal in the UK as well, but that's not to stop many American-based companies attempting it on UK-based employees. But I think in the UK, we would probably treat it as an allowance. So if you work within these areas, you have a 20% loading allowance to take account of the higher expenses for being in that place. So think of it as like a travel expenses and things like that from your home location into the office. But if you're, as Job said, if you're a remote employee from inception, no, they can't touch your contract, because that's what you were engaged on.
Yeah, like you said, in the Netherlands, we're pretty good protected. The only way, if they want to force a pay cut, is when the company is going really bad financially, and they have to go to court to get it arranged. But for the rest of it, we're pretty safe.
Well, that's
we
all
were
if you're,
safe.
Yeah.
And that's all if you're employed, right?
Yeah.
I'm now self-employed.
Yeah.
And the whole rule book is thrown out the window for me.
So you give yourself your own pay cut, or?
Yes, very much. And I did move to a rural area of the Netherlands, as far as that's possible. But the whole rule book for me is just there's advantages and disadvantages of.
Yeah, it's a different ball game.
On your own. It is.
You write your own rule book, Job.
That's true. Yeah. Well, I don't have time for it. I have to be working for clients.
Very true. So picking up on something Tina mentioned earlier on in the discussion, productivity in the office versus working from home. It sounds like for most of you, your productivity has actually increased. Do you think that's typical for other remote workers as well, or are we in IT sort of the exception to that?
I think it depends on the area you're working in, because a lot of people, they had to get used to working remote when COVID hit all countries so hard. So some people really had to get used to it, because they were in a process of, I go to work, I do my work there, I go home. So for a lot of people, this is shifting, this is changing. For me personally, I think working from home makes me definitely more productive, because I can take a break when I need one, not because now this is lunchtime. Now I could go for a coffee break. So I can decide when I need a break and I go back. And yes, I'm not looking at my watch and saying, okay, it's 6 p.m. in the evening, I'm closing everything down. I run over every once in a while, but I also have the option to start later, or to say I need a longer lunch break today, and I then put the time in after 6 or even after 7, because if you're working with colleagues from other countries and they are in a different time zone, you spend more time, but you still get your work done. I definitely work more productive from home than being in the office.
So
For me,
go ahead.
For me, it's a case of what sort of tasks I'm working on. If I'm working on solo tasks, then I am 100% more productive when I'm working from home because I have no distractions. I stick my headphones on, and that's my family's universal sign of don't disturb me. And I don't get disturbed. But when I'm collaborating with a team, it's a little bit more difficult. And sometimes I do miss the interaction of going into an office, getting into a room, standing around a whiteboard and just drawing out the issue, and you move forward a lot quicker. You can do that with things, with Microsoft Teams and other project things like that, where you can share screens and draw on people's laptops remotely. But it's not as interactive. You can't just jump in and go, but.
Yeah, that's right. The interaction is missing if you're working from home. Yeah.
But it depends, because the customer where I am at, I have the daily collaborations with like 5 or 8 people in a call, and then we share screens and show what we do. And beside that, I have 3 kids, so I have to plan around all the morning and evening rituals. And then I to do my solo work in the evening or in the morning. But yeah, I love the collaboration part we're doing with many people in a team session or WebEx, and sharing screens and helping each other, so that it feels like the office, but it's not.
And so I think it also very much depends on whether you're all remote and all have good audio connections.
Yeah.
So I don't necessarily care about video connection, but I do care about audio connections and audio quality, which is kind of weird because my volume was low just now. But if everyone's remote and if everyone has good audio and can share their screen, or knows how to use all those tools, then I think for the most part working remote works fine. But for instance, I had a call with a client yesterday where they were in an office with 3 people and I was the only one remote. That doesn't work as well. I mean, you can still manage, it's still kind of okay, but it would have been better if either we were all remote or we were all in the same room. So it's those kind of gray areas between working in an office and working remotely where I think most of the problems will occur, especially because if a certain group always goes to the office, another group always works remotely, then you'll get cultural differences, cultural issues. Folks that do socialize because they work in the same office versus the ones that are kind of forgotten because they work remotely. That's where a lot of the problems occur. And so again, that's kind of where I started with. If companies don't kind of cater to this new culture and embrace remote working in a way that they are completely integrated into the current culture, the current office working, then problems will start to occur.
In some companies, those problems are already starting to occur. People are already getting cancel culture within teams. If those people are in the office, are seen by the bosses. Oh, they're in the office, they must be working. Oh, why is Johnny or Jane not coming into the office? They live just as far away as Bill and Bert, and Bill and Bert come in every day. And that's the issue. Is it's more about the change in culture and the change in the way that managers need to understand that work is what you do, not where you are. And they also need to start to looking at different metrics to measure how productive somebody is. We in IT, I think, have been very, very lucky in the fact that we've had the ability to work remotely since the 90s. And it's not entirely understood by managers. It's not entirely accepted by managers, but it's there and it's known that we do it and we do it well and we deliver. It's the other companies outside of IT that are really struggling. It's the solicitors, it's the accountants, it's office staff for manufacturing companies, accounts payable, those sort of people. The back office staff for people that the companies that we've worked for or are working for, they're the ones that are really struggling with the concept of remote working. We, as an IT environment, we've rolled it, we've understood it, and on a whole, we don't have that many sort of managers left within our cohort, but the other business streams do, and I think they're the ones that are really going to struggle with any paradigm change where this is concerned.
Yeah, we already have a decade of experience in remote working.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, shifting just a little on this, when you look at a remote worker, there are a bunch of security concerns that come up. From, do I let users print documents at their house, to what if somebody sees content on their screen, to are they locking up their notes at night? What are your thoughts on security?
That is actually a really good question, because I think everybody should put in their own mind, do I have something that nobody else should see, not even my family members should see, because they might be working for a different company, maybe even for a competitor. So how do you secure this? I think everybody has to really decide on how to do it best to really shut down the computer and lock up the notes. Would you do this in the office? Because a lot of companies ask their employees to really shut down everything before they go home in the evening and to restart everything and get their notes out of a container or whatever. So I think this is something you have to apply at home, because you might be sharing something, or you maybe have something you have access to and nobody else should really see this. So you really have to consider, what can I do to secure my work so nothing gets lost or whatever happens. I think everybody has to put in their 3 cents to say, okay, I do it this way. This is the best way I can accomplish this.
Yeah, I think a lot is common sense, but most companies were not prepared for this, for the remote working. So I think the security part is on both sides where it should be good.
I mean, a lot of companies that I've worked for have operated the concept of clean desk. Your desk should be clean when you arrive and it should be clean when you leave. Anytime you leave away from your desk, you lock your computer. It's just that stuff should already have been instilled into everybody. It's common. I mean, we used to do a joke that if someone walked away from someone's computer, we'd be straight on their email and just do an email to everybody, say, I've been stupid, I've left my computer unlocked. It focuses people's minds. But, you know, there's other issues as well. It's like, where do you do your work? I mean, sitting in your house, you know, you make sure you're not behind a window if you're in an environment where you're doing something that's contentious or security related. But on the whole, as long as you're not sat in McDonald's on a public Wi-Fi, you should be really okay. Most machines should now be encrypted. Most machines should be using a VPN or using SSL based methods. It's more of your personal security.
Is it that your password in the background on the whiteboard, Tony? Or
no, actually, it's not. It says visible cloud.
That's his cloud. He's made sure that he's wiped everything off so you can't see it.
Yeah, exactly.
That's actually very accurate. I cleaned it off just for VMworld because there was all sorts of stuff on there. So
yeah, you see a lot of screenshots floating around of people with passwords in the background and all that stuff. And
indeed. So with that, going hand in hand with security, we have privacy concerns for the employee. So is the employee obligated to tell the employer where they've been. Let's say you go on holiday for a weekend and come back. Do you have an obligation to tell your employer that? Can the employer ask that?
No.
So you're asking 3 Europeans.
Yeah.
So the answer is going to be hell no.
Hell no.
Hell no is the European answer to that.
Yeah.
However, and excuse me, I may no longer be part of Europe, but I'm still European. But no, legally in Europe, they're not allowed to ask where you've been. However, morally, you should inform your employer if you're going somewhere that is contentious. I mean, if you work for the government and you decided to have a holiday in North Korea, I think the government has a right to know. Also, if you have gone to a holiday in an area that is currently under quarantine and you come back, your employer has a right to know, because you shouldn't be going into work.
I don't.
If you decided to go up,
that it's a health, it's a piece of health data, and employers, bar some specific exceptions, aren't allowed to ask that. It is, it may be your moral obligation if you actually go into an office.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. It's a moral obligation. It's not a legal obligation.
Yeah.
They have no right to ask it of you. But whether there's a moral responsibility on you as the employee is a different matter.
Very true. I know here in the States, this has been something that has been debated and debated and debated. And essentially, it sounds like the consensus here in the state matches with your consensus of the panel, where no, there's not a requirement to do that, but a moral obligation. So that it's very interesting to see how that matches up. So shifting gears a little bit, because we are at a conference. This is VMworld 2020. Do you think we will go back to traditional conferences?
I don't think so, and I say that with kind of 2 arguments. So the most compelling one is, this stuff is gonna take us a while to conquer. So we're gonna be, at least a year where big events aren't going to be allowed. Also because, a lot of companies don't want to have the risk of being, the first one or one of the first ones, and then it goes south. So, there's a PR brand risk there. But the other part is we're now all kind of getting used to doing events remotely. So even if the physical events come back, which I'm sure they will at some point, but everyone's kind of used to doing this remotely. The audience is bigger. More people can actively join into the conference if they do it remotely. And so the opportunity for organizations and for companies like VMware is that their event is going to be even bigger than it used to be, because it kind of becomes a hybrid of physical plus digital. And I think that, we kind of have to right now. We're doing this because we have to. But I guess the next step is we'll add back in the physical part, but then it becomes a hybrid, and it'll be, completely different than it used to be. But I think the physical stuff will come back at some point.
I agree. I think of it in lines of like the World Cup final. Only 100,000 people can go to the World Cup final, but it's watched by 4 billion people. And I think that's what IT companies, conferences, the big IT conferences like VMworld, Oracle World, Ignite, etc., they'll morph into a reasonable sized physical conference whereby if you can get a ticket, you can go, you can soak in the experience, network physically, and enjoy that conference experience. But the vast majority of people will consume that information virtually in the same way as they view the World Cup final.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I also
like
hope that
analogy.
yeah, I also hope that the physical part is coming back for the when it's safe, because I like the interaction, talking to people face to face, and
Yeah,
going to the fee beers and all the other stuff with the people. So yeah.
Yeah, I think the physical event will come back, but maybe with reduced attendees, and maybe even having a part that it's virtual. But because if you don't go to those conferences, you're not gonna be able to network the way you do when you see people face to face, because you meet people from different countries, from different companies, different roles, which you will never be able really to achieve if you do it virtually. I mean, if you look at VMworld, there's the app. You can exchange messages with other attendees, but first of all, you have to know them, because if you just send someone you don't know a message and saying, "Hi, I'm a VMworld attendee too," most of them probably will not answer because they think it's spam, or they believe the person who's sending
Yeah.
the message is nuts. So this
Yeah.
is something that's really, this is the main part that is missing. If you don't go to a physical conference, you can't really interact on a personal
Yeah.
basis with other attendees.
Yeah, I made many contacts with VMware engineers and other people, and they're still extremely useful for my job and to interact with. So I'm very grateful for that. And being it virtual, yeah, I know for sure you're going to be less in contact with new people.
yeah. I've been going to VMworlds for quite a number of years, and I've made quite a good number of friends through those. First, they started as business contacts. I met Job through VMworld. We've known each other now well over a decade. He still puts up with me, which I find amazing. But
Because you're remote, Tom, it's manageable this way.
Yeah.
That's so true. I love you too, Job. And also, I have friends all over the world because of basically going to VMworld, which you would never have. And it would be sad if that didn't come back for the next generation of people as well.
So, continuing on with this, I know a lot of employers are the ones footing the bill for people to attend conferences. Do you think that employers are going to be willing to pay for employees to attend these conferences now when they can do it virtually and not be exposed to a potential sickness?
If the sickness is still there, then I can understand it. But if it's not, then yeah, for me, there's a big enough business case to go to the conferences and get more out of it. So yeah, it all depends on the situation.
So from an employee perspective, I mean, there is absolutely a lot of value in going to these conferences.
Yeah.
You meet new people, your network gets stronger, you finally understand a new technology you've been wanting to try out, or you solve that one hard problem that you've been challenged by. But from an employer's perspective, honestly, I think a lot of them will default to asking, can't you do it remotely? Because it is, for a lot of employers, especially in the consultancies, letting someone go is more about keeping the employee happy than anything else. And so how much is that worth if there's a virtual option? I think there's going to be a discussion, more of a discussion than there used to be, to let people go to physical conferences, because the value is for the employee, not necessarily for the employer.
I think that the attendees of conferences will become more rarefied and will move further up the management bands, because they will be talking more at a strategic level. They will see the value of interacting with people like Pat, and Sanjay, etc., etc. But I think from an employee point of view, unless there is things of real value like training, dedicated training, and things like that, it's going to be a hard sell for employees to get tickets to physical conferences when everything's online.
Very true. So interesting comment that came in from one of the people watching our live stream from Christian. One problem with virtual conferences is that others don't respect it. It's only online, so I can bother whoever I want anyway, even if they are at a virtual conference.
I think that makes sense. That's it's something I do as well. My part of my job is now to organize these things, so I go to quite a lot of them just to test out the waters, see what other people are doing. What good ideas can I take? What what tips do I have for the organizers? So I go into a lot of these things, and I absolutely don't mind if people disturb me while I'm doing it, because I'm sat at my desk. I don't mind if someone sends me a WhatsApp on my phone, or calls me during, because again my attention span is that of a goldfish, so I can only pay attention for, I don't know, 40 minutes, and then I'm kind of so I don't mind actually. I think it becomes part of what you do in your regular job. You catch a keynote, maybe two, or you catch one breakout session, or you go to one virtual meetup, and that's your conference experience. You don't go and do the whole thing for days on end like you did in a physical event. I think that changes.
Yeah, and you can still silence your messages or all that other stuff to not be bored. So yeah, or bothered. Yeah.
I think it's down to the individual. So if you leave your phone on, or if you read your emails while you attend a virtual conference, you have to decide: do you want to be disturbed because someone will call you or send you a message, or if you say, okay, for the next 2 hours, because this is a topic I'm really interested in, I just switch everything off. So it always depends on if you're willing to get disturbed, or if you say, no, I'm cutting it out now because I want to concentrate. So this is, I think, the same when you go to a conference. If you sit beside someone else in the same session and they have a question, they're not going to wait until the session is over. They're going to ask you quietly what they think or what you think about what's just been said. So you have to find your own way.
Yeah, I agree.
It is partly having the guts to turn off your notifications.
Yeah,
if
indeed.
you don't want to be disturbed.
Yeah.
I do that all the time. Like I have basically all of my notifications switched off all the time, because I'll go through them a couple of times a day, and so that's something that I think changes as well if you're working remotely, because I don't want to be disturbed if I'm having dinner with my family. But it is the moment that a lot of my West Coast-based coworkers wake up and start their workday. So it's a matter of choosing to not be disturbed versus being disturbed actively.
Yeah, you need to create some self-discipline on that too, just to protect yourself.
Absolutely.
I mean, from a conference perspective, I've always been available, but the advantages if I'm working for a UK-based client at that time over, and I'm in VMworld for instance, is that with it being West Coast based, they're not working when the conference is on, and they're asleep when the rest of it. So the periods for interaction is basically email based rather than real time, unless the proverbials hit the fan, and then you just walk out of the conference and actually engage in helping fix the problem, which is what you would do, and that's just the same as it is here. But I do believe that if you're sat at a desk, you're probably going to consume your conference mainly through catch-ups, and which is what most people did after the events anyway.
Yeah, that's the more interesting question to me is, do people, like VMworld this week, do people switch off their work? Like, will they be focused on VMworld exclusively for a couple of days, or will they do it as a kind of a second monitor, second screen thing, where they will watch some content, they will interact at some points, but it's not exclusive. They'll do their regular job at the same time. So that's the more interesting question to me is how many people do actually focus on VMworld exclusively versus how many will have a second screen and kind of watch it in the background.
I'm second screening.
Yeah, me too. Just mixing it up. Yeah.
Yeah. I forgot how to log into VMworld, so I haven't actually watched anything. So I'll watch it after, because that's kind of the mode I'm in for most events. So I'll figure it out at some point. I'll rewatch the keynotes. Was it interesting at all?
The one thing I am missing, and I'll say this now, from the conference, is the solutions exchange.
Yeah.
That was where I spent most of my time at conference, and that's where I had my most interesting conversations and where I learnt about what was new, and that thing there might actually solve this problem that I've been having. I tended to consume VMware content, VMworld conference post-conference.
Yep.
I spent most of my time at conference either in the hang spaces, networking, or on the solution exchange floor.
Yeah, and I totally agree. That's my experience as well. That's how I did conferences for the longest time. And I don't see that, I don't see a solid replacement for that yet in digital events.
No.
I mean, there's, people try, there's software out there that kind of does this Second Life imitation, which I find gimmicky and doesn't add value at all. It even makes me feel kind of disregarded by whoever thought of using that. Like it's not a good experience. And there's just no replacement of those physical elements of having a hang space, going through all of the vendor booths at a show like that. And I think that's something I do really miss, simply because there's no digital equivalent yet. And maybe someone will create the perfect software for it, but I think that's going to be the real challenge.
Yeah, and VR isn't mainstream yet for everybody, so that isn't really a solution yet. Yeah.
Even then, it's going to be so gimmicky.
Yeah.
It will stand in the way instead of being a seamless experience where, basically I want an experience where the computer I'm sitting in front of doesn't limit me in interacting with people on the other side. And, VR and AR and all that kind of stuff will be in the way for the next couple of years just because it hasn't matured yet. So, I worry that if we have to do digital events and can't have physical for a couple of years, that element, like Tom described, will kind of disappear altogether.
So do you think that'll impact sponsorship? Do you think sponsors are going to start shying away from these digital conferences because they don't have a good method in many cases to show their wares?
So that's a two-sided coin. So I totally agree. There's, the options they have aren't as good as they used to. But I don't think they'll go away. I don't think they'll shy away from digital events like this, because what are their options really? There's no real alternative. I mean, they can do their own webinar, but that doesn't attract a very large crowd usually. It's harder to do. It's harder to be credible if you organize your own webinar versus appearing in someone else's. So, I mean, I guess the need for brand awareness, for informing people of your wares is still a thing companies need to do, even though it is, less valuable or less attractive than it used to be with physical events. I think companies will still have to do it, and will continue to host events themselves where they can sign up sponsors and sign up to other people's events as well. I think it'll continue.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I think.
I think.
Go on, sorry, Tina.
Go ahead. And I think sponsors will always be available because they have to make sure they're still known by people. So if they shy away from conferences or from sponsoring at all, some companies might go back into, let's say, the background because not everybody is familiar with them. So if they don't show their brand, I wouldn't say they will be forgotten, but it will go away. So they're not into everybody's faces. So they have to go and do the sponsoring just to make sure that everybody knows they're still related to whatever conference they are sponsor of.
Yeah, that's my view. I think the power of having your logo on a big conference's sponsorship board is still very powerful. You know, even if it's down at the silver and bronze tier level, your logo is still there, so you can still be seen, and people go, "Oh, who's that? Why are they there?"
Yeah,
That's
visibility is key. Yeah.
Whether or not there will be a cost adjustment in terms of sponsorship prices is another question, because they don't have the physical presence at that conference. But I still believe that I think the number of sponsors may actually grow if the cost comes down, because more people will be able to put their logo on that environment.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think instead of having big events, we'll have many more smaller ones. So that'll make it more attractive for the smaller fish in the sea to either organize an event themselves or sponsor another event.
Most definitely. So it's time to start wrapping up this great panel discussion. I've really enjoyed this. And so we're going to end with two questions. First one is, how do folks get a hold of you? I know most every one of you is reachable on Twitter and places like Discord, YouTube, and your personal blogs. And the second part of that is 2020 the year of VDI? And Tina, since you're at the top of my screen, I'd like to invite you to go first.
Yes, you can reach me on Twitter, send me a DM, or just reply to one of my tweets, and I'm happy to reach out and then let you know by email. The year of the VDI, I think, yes, to make it brief.
It is never supposed to be the year of VDI.
No.
The world has now stopped. What are we going to do? We'll have to ask a different question. When will Linux take over the desktop, perhaps?
Oh, that's 2021. Like 2020 is a bad year, but the year that Linux takes over the desktop, that's hell on earth. 2021.
That's the cockroach on Windows, right? Yeah. Yeah.
Lawrence, would you like to?
Yeah. Well, you can reach me on Twitter, LinkedIn, all the community Slacks I'm in, via my blog. So find me. I will reach to you back on that. The year of VDI. Yeah, it's interesting. I switched to a new company in September, and my focus there is working on portal-based applications, promoting that, workflows, like mobile flows. So yeah, I would like to see more the transition to that than using a VDI as a how do you call it? A patch for using old applications. Yeah, right. It's like trying to virtualize iOS and then use iOS virtually. So yeah, that's my 2 cents on it.
So Tom, how do people reach out to you?
You can reach me on Twitter on Tom_Howarth. You can reach me on LinkedIn. You can reach me via email at tom.howarth@planetvm. Apparently, you can now reach me on Discord because I've just joined that. Never even heard of it before today. But then again, say I'm an old geezer now. I don't know these newfangled things. As to the year of VDI, yeah. Even in this time, I still don't have a VDI desktop. And I'm a person who's been known for being a VDI person.
Yeah, as Brian has posted in the chat, it's a trap.
Yes, it is.
It's a technical dead end, to be perfectly honest.
Well, it's been beneficial for me. So, yes, Joop, you want to go ahead and
Yep. So reach me on Twitter at @jpiskaag, or just search Joop, Joop, and you'll probably find me. And so as of if it's the year of VDI, so if it ever becomes the year of VDI, that's the year when I stop working in IT and will, probably become like a pizza baker or a farmer. So please, someone declare it the year of VDI so I can finally have the guts to switch careers and do something more fulfilling with my life than IT. But all jokes aside, I agree with Tom. I don't think it'll ever be the year of VDI. I think it's a ship that has sailed, and I do really hope it's a ship that has sailed because it's an old it's an old way to repackage old applications for old ways of work. It just doesn't fit anything modern anymore.
Very true. So, we've come to the end of our hour. It's been a wonderful session. Thank you all for participating as panelists in this session on what the future of work holds for us. We appreciate everybody joining us either live or catching this later on in the replays. We hope you've enjoyed it. Thank you so much for participating in this opening acts session. We look forward to having you join us for the next one.
Yeah, thank you for having us. It was a
Yeah,
great
Thank you for having us.